Hi, my name is John Moore, and I am a shamanic practitioner and teacher from Maine in the US. And today I want to talk to you about something that's really important because the vast majority of the clients that I see on a day to day basis come to me with the same complaint. People will reach out to me for a shamanic healing or for mentoring or what have you, and I'll say, okay, what is it that brought you to me? What made you reach out to me today? When I first started my practice, for like the first year or two, 100% of my clients came to me to work on trauma. Part of this is because I have I have a traumatic background, and having worked on those wounds myself shamanically, there is this kind of wound resonance where people can sort of feel out the people who uh, have worked through that and seek them out. And so I had resonance with these people, and the people still come to me who have trauma, but they all are also complaining to me about this feeling of just being disconnected. And when I go into that, when I ask them about it, they talk about feeling disconnected from themselves, disconnected from spirit, disconnected from the world. What's going on here? Well, this really started as we got into the global COVID-19 pandemic. And it's understandable because there were, lockdowns and social distancing, and people weren't seeing family members and friends. There's lack of socialization. People are wearing masks in public, so you can't see their face. And one might think that that is the cause of this feeling of disconnection. But I don't think so, because I've worked with so many people with this experience. This is not the root cause of this disconnection. I'm going to tell you what that is in a moment. The pandemic has exacerbated things, right? It's sort of like if you have diabetes and then you become obese, and then the obesity could have caused the diabetes, but you might have had the diabetes first, and each one of those things can exacerbate each other, right? Just on a physical level. So what's happening with this feeling of disconnection? Most people feel this. Most people feel some sense of disconnection. We feel it whether we're anxious or depressed, or even in times where we're kind of happy and we're waiting for the other shoe to drop. And I was talking to somebody last night who was like, yeah, I've caught myself recently where like I'm playing with my kids and I'm really happy, and then all of a sudden I stop myself and I go, wait a minute, I'm not allowed to be happy. What's that about? Well, there's this major thing that goes on with all of us that happens to everybody. Every human being on the planet has this same thing, and very few people have sought out help to kind of overcome that, or overcome it on their own, or gone through spiritual retreats or whatever it is that allowed them to overcome this issue. And that issue, in my opinion, is that we are identifying with things that are not us. So for example, when I come on, I say, I am a shamanic practitioner. I'm identifying with that role. That's a role that I play. But I'm not always doing that. Sometimes I'm being a dad. Sometimes I'm asleep. Sometimes, and if I stopped doing that, so whenever I'm doing something else, or when I stop doing that, do I cease to exist? And the answer to that is no, of course not. So we identify with titles, with roles, with personas. None of these things is who we are at our core, right? At our core, we are a spirit. We are a spirit that has a soul, that has a body, that has an energy body. And these things are things we have. So, whether you believe in life after death, I certainly do. I know I have experienced the other side. I know people who have had near-death experiences, who have actually been physically dead for a period of time and come back. And there's a part of you, there's a divine spark in you that has never been born and never dies and is not affected by your life circumstances and is not affected by any lifetime that you have. And this immortal piece of you that is outside of time and space, although I'll tell you, very frequently we can locate it. It really doesn't have a center or a circumference or anything like that, but for us to conceive of it, we locate it at a spot inside our chest. And there's this divine spark. This is why the heart is so important. We think with our heart, we think with our gut, we think with our mind. But our consciousness is what we really are, and that divine spark that cannot be affected by anything that goes on. So very frequently we identify with our body. Okay, I'm a body, I'm a physical body. This is me. This is my arm. This is, But if I were to lose an arm, would I cease to exist? No, right? I mean, you might argue that if I died, I cease to exist in this form, but the divine spark in me never goes away. If, as I get older, I know that every 9 years or so, every cell in the body has been completely replaced. So there is nothing that is a part of me physically that is permanent. I'm starting to get gray hair in my temples. If I grew my beard out, it's pretty white right now, which I'm getting up there. Getting up there in age. These glasses are new in the past couple of years, right? So my physical body is changing constantly. So how do you identify with something that isn't steady? And when you identify with something that isn't steady or permanent, then that creates this feeling of uncenteredness, of ungroundedness, right? It creates this feeling, for me, it's a little bit like anxiety where I don't know who I am. I don't know where I land. I don't know where I stand. Okay? So identify with roles, identify with my body. People identify with their thoughts. And how ridiculous is that? Because we do not, from second to second, have the same thought. Talk about something that's impermanent. Thought is completely impermanent. Thought is it's like clouds passing through the sky. Thought doesn't, clouds might stay for a little while, but they're not permanently there, and they aren't the sky, right? The clouds are not the sky. The sky is the container for the clouds. We are the container for our experience, for our mind, for our body, for our consciousness contains all of this. And we identify with our place in the world. And we identify strongly as human beings with groups of things. So we have group identity as well, where we say, I'm an American, right? I'm an American. So does that mean I have to agree with everything that every other American believes in? What does that mean? And if I gave up my citizenship, which I don't really want to do, but if I gave up my citizenship, would I cease to exist? No. So I'm identifying with something that's not me. And I realize in some other languages, they don't use such rigid identifying language as we do in English. In English, we say, I am. I am hungry. I am tired. I am angry. So again, this is an identification with impermanent states, with things that come and go. And how can you feel centered? How can you feel connected when we are, identifying with all of these different things, and none of them are who we are? So we're scattered, we're all over the place. So it's natural that creates this underlying feeling of disconnection. That feeling of disconnection surfaces when all of a sudden our world changes. We go into a pandemic. There's war going on in Europe as I record this, and I'm hoping that a peaceful resolution is found very soon. There's all kinds of things going on, turmoil going on in the world. Lots of divisiveness, political divisiveness between, socioeconomic status, racism, all of this stuff. We've identified with stuff that isn't us. And then when that stuff gets stirred up, when I don't know what it means to be an American or a dad, my kids, my role, I identify as a dad, but my kids are growing up. They started out as infants and now they're teenagers. And I'm like, when did that happen, right? And that naturally, when I identify with that, and that circumstance throws me for a loop. So what can we do about this? Well, it's not necessarily about changing our identity or idea of our identity. It will change on its own. It's really about starting to disidentify with the things that we are not. So I'll just give you a little brief, and I'm developing a whole program around this where we actually go in and we discover our divine connection to the entire universe, to everything there is in the universe. And we understand at an experiential level, not just thinking, we actually experience the idea that we are this impermanent divine spark, that we are co-creating everything in the universe, and that when we do that, and the more we do that, and the stronger we do that, then we feel, even when we're working through our persona, as I'm doing now, my persona as a person on YouTube with a shamanic practitioner and teacher and yada yada, I'm speaking to you through my persona. But even as I'm doing that, I know this isn't really who I am at my core, right? I'm not lying to you when I say I'm teach shamanism. This persona does teach shamanism. What's untrue about that is that's not all I am, and that's not the core of who I am, and it's not the core of who you are. So my persona is talking to your persona, and your persona hopefully will take some of this in, and you can turn your consciousness, you can direct your consciousness towards who you really are. And so I'm going to give you just a really brief practice that you can do. You can do this in meditation. You can take a couple of minutes and do this. It's a beautiful practice. It really, when I do this practice, which just involves a recitation during a meditation or closed eyes or whatever, all of a sudden I feel like everything settles down and becomes beautifully still. And the reason for that is I'm stopping the identification with some of the things that I am not. I'm disidentifying. So the recitation is this. You can close, you don't have to do it now, but you can close your eyes and you can say this out loud, or you can say this in your mind. You can say, I have a body, but I'm not my body. I have thoughts, but I am not my thoughts. I have feelings, but I'm not my feelings. And then you repeat those 3 phrases. You can do that for a couple of minutes and just pay attention to how you feel as you start. This is the beginning, this is kindergarten of disidentification, so that what you strip away from what you're identifying with is leads you to nothing but what you really are. This isn't to say that your body stops existing or that your personas stop existing. It's just you're not as heavily connected to them, and so you can't get thrown for a loop. If I get physically ill, I'm like, well, that's my body, and I can do things to heal that spiritually, but it doesn't cause a huge panic for me. It doesn't throw me off so much, because it's not who I am. This body eventually will die. This body is not immortal. I'm sorry. There are people trying to do that and trying to do that since the beginning of time, make their bodies immortal. I don't see the point of that, because who you are really, what that is over-identification with the body. That isn't to say let your body go. You have a body for a reason. It's a nice tool, but it's a tool. It's a thing you have. It's not a thing you are. And understand that difference. So do that practice. I have a body, but I am not my body. I have thoughts, but I am not my thoughts. I have feelings, but I'm not my feelings. Just experience that. Let me know how it goes in the comments. subscribe to this channel, and I hope to talk to you real soon.